Okay. Okay, just calling the room to order then. This is the Community Governance Review Working Group, Monday the 31st of January, 2 p.m. Mobile phones to silent, please. As the agenda, apologies for absence. Do we have any apologies for absence?
I've had apologies from Councillor Adam Stokes. That's the only one I've been notified of.
Okay, there are no other apologies in the room or online. That's fine. So disclosures of interest. Are there any disclosures of interest? Okay, there are no disclosure of interest. So you can specify those at any stage. Item 3, the notes of the meeting held on the 17th. Are there any comments on the notes from the meeting held on the 17th? Okay, can I have a proposal that's a true and accurate record of that meeting? Councillor Smith, thank you. And a seconder? A seconder that is a true and accurate meeting. Councillor Rice-Oxley, thank you very much. All those in favour that that's a true and accurate record of that meeting? 5. Any against? And any abstentions? Just 2 abstentions, so that is carried. Just on the actions from those minutes, if we can just look at those. There were a couple of actions there. Members, we're going to let officers know of any further groups for inclusion in the consultations. Do you have anything from that, Graham?
I don't know if I have been informed of any groups, but at any time from now until the consultation goes live, or even during the consultation going live, members can let us know which particular groups may need a copy of the documentation or a link to the survey. We can make that arrangement for them.
So if you can roll that action over, please. So we have until the 24th or the 25th of February to supply names of groups or individuals that may be useful to consult with. And the other action, of course, is this meeting. Okay, so item 4, the Community Governance Review Draft Consultation Document. Graham. Sorry, Councillor Smith. Microphone, please.
Do we have a clear designation of the boundaries? Because there are some changes.
I think we'll take that as the first question on the consultation document. That's a question about the boundaries. Graham, do you want to talk about that in your presentation of the documents? Thanks.
Thank you, Chairman. So further to the last meeting where we brought a draft version or a first draft of the consultation documentation, we've done a lot of work in the background to bring you a further draft of some documents that are effectively in the format that they will be sent out in. So you've got 2 documents in front of you. One is an information document, and then the other is the actual survey itself. So you'll remember, as part of the last meeting, we went through all of the supporting information that gave people the opportunity to get information and read information about the particular issues that are relevant to the questions we're asking in the document in the survey. So the information document itself sets out what is a community governance review, what's the area under review, why are we carrying one out, the process for creating a parish or town council, how the review is going to work, and then some information about what is a town or parish council. Further to discussion at the last meeting, setting out some of the key information about how much would a town or parish council cost. And again, as we referred to at the previous meeting, we were a bit nervous about putting a specific figure on any potential increase in a precept, because we don't actually know what that will be. It will be up for that individual parish or town council, should one be established, to set its own precept. So we have identified that there would be a cost implication to a new town or parish council, but we can't really confirm how much that would be in real terms. And then some other information in relation on the parish, what areas would be covered as part of the review, and whether there'd be any impact on boundaries. So that question, Councillor Smith, in relation to what the boundary is, that is one of the key elements of the survey. So there's some maps in the documentation which sets out the current boundary of the unparished area of Grantham, but there's a wider question as to what happens to any neighbouring parishes, particularly those that have got development happening in their areas. So it's a key question of the survey as to, you know, what boundary does this new parish or town council take effect of?
The big one, of course, is the one that's just north of the two parishes there that will be started on very soon, and that will be quite a substantial area. And of course, it's at the moment covers two parishes.
So the maps at the back of that information document, there are two maps which show the existing boundary of the unparished Grantham town area, and then the map B actually sets out those development sites, as well as the current district ward boundaries as well. So there's two maps there that show that information. So that's the first document. The second is the actual survey itself. So there should be enough information within this first document to provide anyone with information where they can make a clear judgment as to how they feel about the questions that we're posing as part of the survey. And there's a brief introduction to each of the questions. Now, since the last meeting, we've added a bit more context in relation to question one, just as a way of an introduction, but always linking back to that information document to ensure that that people have know that they've got the information there if they need it before they commit to responding. And it's not just a paper version. You can go online. There's a QR code on the front of the document where, if you've got a smartphone, you can get it up on your device, and the survey is exactly the same as the paper format, so you can complete it online or on the paper version as well. So this is effectively it's been a really quick turnaround from our last meeting to get this in the current design and format ready to go. We've got quite a tight turnaround in terms of the print run, so we have to let them have it on the 11th of February in order that we can get it printed and distributed in time for the commencement of the consultation process on the 25th of February. Full council at the meeting last week did agree to delegate decision making to this group in relation to the format and the content of the consultation document. So, Chairman, the purpose of the meeting today is to ensure that you're happy with the content of the document and its format as well. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have on that.
Before we go into questions, members of the group have reached out to me just to clarify some of the phasing of this. Just to remind members of the working group, we're at present in the kind of administrative phase where we're just trying to set up a consultation and make sure that all the appropriate elements are in there. Members of the group have asked me, at what stage will members of the group be given the opportunity to give their opinions? Obviously, there'll be consultees on this. We have a platform here to give those opinions. At what stage, Graham, do you envisage that we will effectively have everything in place from an administrative perspective, and that we as a group will be able to go round the room and say, right, member by member, what's your opinion on all of this? Graham, can you just comment on that first, and then I'll take questions? Thank you.
Yeah, so the process at the moment for the role of the working group at this stage is, as you say, Chairman, to basically ensure that we are facilitating the review, so that there could be a consultation process as part of the community governance review. So we are effectively an administrative function at the moment in terms of ensuring that everything is in place to undertake a fair and neutral consultation process. Once that goes live, all district councillors are on the list of stakeholders. So all district councillors will be able to put their comments in as part of the process and respond to the consultation. It may be that you, once the consultation is live, you may wish to meet as a group and discuss how you feel as a group about the pros and cons potentially of a town council for Grantham. Bear in mind, however, that this group will effectively be making a recommendation to council. So at the end of the consultation process, it'll be this group that collates all of that information and will make a recommendation to full council. Further to that, obviously, as members of the council, you will be part of the final decision making in relation to the outcome of the review and whether or not the council agrees to establish a parish or town council or not. So just an element of caution in relation to predetermination in terms of anything, you know, if you was to say, for example, no matter what happens, I will be voting for a parish or town council for Grantham, that clearly is a very clear statement that you've made. And when it comes to full council, it'll be very difficult to you to kind of demonstrate that you're coming to this with an open mind if you've gone on the public record to say, I'm totally for or totally against a parish or town council for Grantham. So you've got to just be very similar to a planning application. You've got to be very careful about what you're saying in the public domain as part of an active consultation process. It doesn't stop you putting your comments into the consultation process, but in terms of a public meeting or a public statement, you've got to be very careful in terms of having that open mind for when it does eventually come back to full council.
But just to confirm, with the appropriate caveats, there will be an opportunity once the consultation windows opens or thereabouts to effectively go through the committee member by member saying with the appropriate caveats, what is your position upon what we're consulting on. Okay, that's helpful. Thank you. Councillor Wootton.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I want to speak on the additional areas which may be included in the town council. Not my area, but the Sunningdale area seems to be an appropriate area which could be classed as Grantham, yet is not on the proposed area. What criteria will we be using to establish whether that should join the area if only a small number of people want to join, or again, a lot of people don't want to join? Thank you.
Graham.
Thank you, Chairman. So in terms of any proposals such as that, that's why we're having a consultation process. So if there's a clear steer from the responses to the consultation that a specific element should be included in that boundary, then that is what we'd need to consider as part of considering all of the responses that are received as part of the consultation process.
Microphone.
Sorry, 51% of the people say yes, so we're going to go ahead and include that area. Then you're just going to use your judgment. Is that correct?
It's the judgment of this working group. Okay, are there any other questions and comments on the two documents that we have in front of us? Councillor Rice-Oxley.
Thank you, Chairman. Just a few sort of small things from the information document. I think they're brilliant documents, by the way, Graham. Well done to Graham and his team. Just on page 2, who is carrying out the review? It'd be overseen by the Council's Community Governance Review Working Group, which is made up of members from all. Now, I know that you know that members means councillors, but I, as a resident, I wouldn't necessarily know that meant. I just wonder whether councillors might be clearer than members. That was one thing. Second thing, on page 4, penultimate paragraph, you've got 2 alsos. I have a feeling that one of those is a stray also. Penultimate paragraph, town and parish councils also represent their communities. These local councils can also play. I think you probably don't need it in the first sentence, but that's just a question for consideration. And the only other thing is also on page 4, how much would the town and parish council cost? I completely understand that you don't want to say how much it would cost, but the sentence, it is highly likely that the precept would be more than the current rate paid by Grantham residents. If we don't give people any idea, I mean, that could, that could be a lot more. I don't know. I just want some thought, some discussion maybe about that, because to me that could be hundreds more, couldn't it? Whereas I don't think it would be hundreds more. I'm just saying, could that be any slightly clearer so people have at least a ballpark about what it would go up by? Thank you.
I think it's really difficult because we don't know what services the council would be responsible for. If you look at the comparisons between our current town councils, they're all extremely different in terms of the precepts that they have in place. So it's difficult. What I think is clear is that there will be an increase because the new authority will have more responsibility, financial and in terms of service provision, than it currently does as a charter trustee arrangement. So it's quite clear that it will go up, but until the council agrees what it's actually going to be fundamentally responsible for and what precepts it sets to deliver its services, it's really difficult. I mean, we could put averages in there, but again, once you put a figure in there, you kind of you could be held to account. You know, you might say it might go up to such and such per month for a Band D property, and then the council itself could set it really high compared to what you set out in the consultation document, and then you might get people saying, well, you told us when you consulted us that it was going to be this much, and you know, it ends up being more. So it's just trying to be a bit careful in terms of but it kind of misleading people, really, which I know what you're saying, and it's a balance, isn't it? We're just trying to be as kind of upfront as we can be in terms of, you know, there's obviously going to be a cost implication.
Councillor Mason.
Thank you. Just following on from your explanation there to Kathy, just a thought that's occurred to me. Could we not put in the appendix what the other town councils, get my words out, charge, but with the caveat underneath is, you know, they're all different services and it very much depends upon the service, and perhaps, you know, because then, like Kathy's right, it could be hundreds, and you know, with inflation costs, house food costs, electricity, people are going to be very, very, very wary. So I think if we just don't tie ourselves into a corner, but maybe give a little bit more information of what else is happening around the district, and making it clear that's different services, perhaps something to think about. Anyway, my question on page 2, how to respond, concerns me a little bit, because all we've got is survey online or complete paper version and return it to. So where can people find the paper version? Is there a phone number for people to phone to get the paper version sent out to them? Are we going to be sending out to them? I'm just thinking about people that have difficulty with using online. People have difficulty with writing, with reading English, but they can speak English. There's all kinds of different issues there, and I just don't feel we've made it clear enough on that page. Thank you.
Graham.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, so on the back of the documents, I think on the back of both documents, there's a contact details section, and that sets out that obviously alternative formats are available. It's got a contact number on there, a designated email address. This documentation will be going out to every household in Grantham as well as the surrounding parishes. So a hard copy will be posted out to every property in Grantham and the surrounding villages or parishes. A letter will accompany the 2 documents. So every household will get both documents and a covering letter to explain what the process is. And that will also have the contact details on as well. So hopefully we will have provided enough opportunity for everyone to have the information and get in touch with us if they need anything in addition. We're aiming to get that printed and circulated on the 25th of February. So it'll be sent out on the 25th of February from our printers.
Okay. Are there any other comments and questions?
Yes, I've got some, Graham.
Councillor Whittington.
Yes, thank you very much indeed, Graham. I think the question that Ray raised around the boundaries is quite interesting. You know, Ray referred to Sunningdale potentially as, you know, an area that's sort of not within the boundary at the moment, but actually when you actually look at the building developments, you know, it's now sort of part of what people would consider to be Grantham. And I'm actually thinking in terms of what Jackie was also talking about, the developments that are coming up on Barrowby Road, because, you know, if you look at the map, you can see that, you know, once they are built out, you know, they will be connected to the rest of Grantham, and then, you know, then we have got the real issue that, you know, that some of it will be within the current Grantham boundary. There's a bit that's in Gunnerby and a bit in Barrowby, and I know certainly I'm a member of Barrowby Parish Council, and of course Barry Parish Council, I've been talking with some glee about potential increase about being able to share the precepts out across these new developments that are now coming in within Barry Parish. So I suspect you might get quite a bit of pushback, maybe potentially from sort of the Belton and Manthorpe Parish around Sunningdale, and possibly going to be in Barry Parish councils around these sort of developments up on Barrowby Road, in terms of sort of the impact that it may have upon them. So that's just a general observation. I think Kathy raises a very, very interesting point about the cost as well. And I guess, you know, it's extremely difficult for us to give an indication of cost, other than to say we think it's highly likely the cost will go up, but unfortunately we don't quite know what that is. I think maybe then it would be down to sort of residents to kind of deter themselves. But I think Annie raised a good point around that. You know, we know the people are going to be faced with energy bills that may be on the verge of doubling. We know the national insurance contributions are going to be going up. We know that inflation is probably going to peak at somewhere around about 7% next year. So there's an awful lot of other cost pressures that are in there at the moment on the family budgets of people. You know, so then potentially we could be then saying, oh, well, we want a bit extra as well. So I'm just concerned about that, and think to myself that financially, you know, we're asking people now, it might sort of, the financial side of it might play quite a important role in how people think about it, you know, in terms of other residents think about it, in terms of some of the other cost issues they've got coming down the line. So that's just another general comment. But my question is then around the rollout, because obviously, you know, we've discussed previously that we can't roll out until after the by-elections. Okay, that's fair enough. So I'm guessing, I think what Graham's just said, the documents are going to be posted out on the 25th of February, so they'll be arriving on people's doorsteps on the sort of 26th, I guess, in the start of the following week. Now, I presume that the documents will then be available online from the 25th. And I know it's going to be difficult to give any advanced publicity to this during the by-election campaign, but just be interested in a bit of advice on that from Graham, because I'm just thinking that potentially we could be in a situation where all these documents start arriving on people's doorsteps on the 26th of February and start the following week, and there's been any sort of prior notification. I'm just wondering how, given the fact that we're a little constrained because of the by-elections, what we can do in terms of some initial publicity. And I was thinking potentially around seeing if we get something in the Grantham Journal for the Friday the 25th. But of course, I'm very much aware of, I mean, certainly when I was growing up in Grantham, I think majority of people tended to either buy the journal every week or read a copy of it. I think, but that's dropped right off now. People source their news online as well and whatever. So I'm just wondering what we can do to give some kind of stay within the requirements of PERDA and the by-elections, but at the same time still give residents, you know, from the 25th of February, some sort of concentrated publicity that this 6 weeks has started, because the danger is, you know, if you then start to publicise it from the 25th of Feb, it may take 2 or 3 weeks to get the momentum going, and then people are going to be tired, you know, and then you may have a couple of weeks left to actually get the forms filled in. So I'm just wondering how all that's going to play out, Graham. Thanks.
Thanks, Chairman. So yes, we will be working closely with our communications team to ensure that we can give due publication to this as much as possible. And it won't just be, so obviously there'll be our website and our social media, and I'll be guided by communications in terms of what we can do with other media such as the Grantham Journal to make sure that we can give as much publicity as possible, not just on the day that it goes out, but throughout the whole 6 week period as well, to ensure that there's reminders about, you know, make sure that you respond to the consultation, and you know, making sure that people are constantly reminded that they've got until the 8th of April to provide us with a response and get their surveys completed and sent back to us. But in terms of the places like the Grantham Journal. I'll work with communications to ensure that we've got a dialogue with them and make sure that they are on board in terms of helping us publicise the consultation.
Councillor Westrop.
Yes, sorry, can you hear me now? I was just wondering what the covering letter is going to be, because if I was a councillor or if I was a member in the town council, in the town, and this letter arrived on my floor, I wouldn't really know what it was all about. Is there going to be any sort of reason for this arriving at this particular time, and why I needed to reply within 6 weeks, and why I needed to get involved? Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. So the letter will be quite because we're obviously sending them quite a detailed document in the information document, and then they're also going to have the survey document. So I didn't want the letter to be very long, really. More of an introduction as to what this review is, and here's your opportunity to read further information and provide a response to the survey. So it's just going to be a very light touch letter just to introduce the two documents, but all of the information that they obviously need is in the information document. So I didn't want to duplicate what was already in there.
Can I come back on that one? Are we going to actually mention anything about the governance review or the white paper review from Michael Gove, or anything about what the government is actually doing, so that they have some reason to actually do something about this particular document?
Thank you, Chairman. This review is kind of separate to any of the reference to the government's white paper. This is a community governance review that's got its own kind of set of regulations and legislation. So it's a separate process. So I think that's the process that we have to follow. So to make reference to any other kind of areas of work that are taking place, or any other schemes or proposals, I think we need to follow the guidance in relation to this particular community governance review. So that's what we'd recommend referencing in the letter.
Thank you.
Councillor Steptoe. Councillor Steptoe. Oh, sorry. Councillor Wood.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. On page 2, if I was looking at this document, it says, why is the council carrying out a community governance review now? It doesn't give me much information. It doesn't tell me that we are not a council due to the old borough was taken out of existence in 1974, and why it did not become a town council in 1974. Thank you.
Councillor, I'll take a few comments and then we'll get some responses. Councillor Smith.
I think we've, excuse me, I think we've got to be careful about how we promote it, because the main point, I think, for a lot of people will be, what's it going to cost?
Thank you. Councillor Rice-Oxley. Microphone.
It's just a question about the phrase community governance review. I still have to reread the phrase community governance review quite often. I'm just wondering whether, I mean, for example, so one says community governance review and the other one says, should Grantham have a town council, which of course is way clearer to everybody. I'm just wondering, do we have to call it a community governance review? I mean, you know, like the web address is /Grantham CGR. And I'm just thinking, who's going to remember CGR? It's just a question. Maybe it's a legal thing. I don't know. I just think.
I'd like to add some comments along a similar line. Okay, first of all, Graham, Judith, thanks very much for this document. It's a great start point, because we were looking at a blank sheet of paper a month ago, so it's a great start point. However, I'm not sure it goes far enough for me. I'm not sure that there's questions of context need answering, questions of background. I think you've got to talk about the unitary context. You've got to talk about the idea that the decisions at the moment, the special expense area decisions about how money is spent in Grantham, those decisions are being taken in Bourne and Stamford. The direction of travel is that those decisions are going to get further from Grantham. Now, it's not, these decisions have not been taken in Grantham for a long time, since the 1970s. So we're talking about moving the decision-making powers that were taken away from Grantham in the 1970s, and they were placed in Bourne or Stamford or wherever the leadership of this district was. And the direction of travel is that they're going to be moved further away to Whitehall or to Lincoln or further away. That's the direction of travel. When it comes to the finances, yeah, I understand there's all sorts of caveats there, but nevertheless, we can still say what other town councils charge, what they get for those services. We can still say that every taxpayer in the Grantham Parish area spends about £100 a household on the special expense area. And those decisions as to how to spend that £100 are taken in Stamford. They're not trusted to the people of Grantham. They're taken elsewhere. And the £3.99 that the Charter trustees take, that's the only element of your bill that is taken by decision makers in Grantham. So if your council tax, £3.99 is spent in Grantham by people from Grantham, and everything else is spent by people outside of Grantham. So we can put context like that in, and I think that would be helpful. And I'd also like to see some modelling. I'd like to see some modelling in terms of scope. We've all commented on the map. We all know that Grantham is growing. And to be honest, I think London, Thorpe and Harrowby without and Barrowby would expect to be part of this consultation. It's not that they should be or they might be, they'd expect to be part. I mean, we've heard from Councillor Whittington that there's dramatic changes that are happening within Barrowby. Blimey, the changes within London, Thorpe and Harrowby, that's almost going to be an urban borough very soon. So they would expect to be part of this. It's not a maybe or a should be or a could be. They have to be part of this consultation. And we mentioned the price of the modelling. The price of the modelling, yes, the tax may go, because there are fixed costs with the town council. However, the broader the remit, the smaller those fixed costs are. So, I mean, I know that Stamford claims to manage its town budgets better than a special expense area, which, okay, we could never get to the bottom of whether that's true or not, but it's not actually black and white to say that the costs may rise. Now, I think they probably will. I think one of the things about bringing decision-making of 98% of your tax bill back to the people of Grantham is that there has to be local oversight of professionals to make sure that gets spent correctly. And so that may incur a small charge. But I think this document needs to do more about the context, more about the scope, a little bit more about the financing with all the caveats that I've mentioned. And I think that I'd be looking at this, trying to get the kids ready for school and everything. I'd be going, oh my God, where's the exec summary? I'd be looking for the pros and cons. And to be honest, I mean, the way financial reports are written is, I mean, I look at financial reports a lot. There's an exec summary, which 99.9% of people never make it past. And that's kind of what I'd expect to see, an exec summary with the pros and the cons laid out. I mean, the essential positive for me is the fact that decision-making powers on 98% of your bill are not taken in Grantham. I'd like a bit more of that taken in Grantham. Thank you very much. And the cons, as we've spoken about in some of the modelling, turn to page 37 to look at the modelling. So the scope of the Barrowby, I mean, things like financial, I'd like to understand a little bit more about the process. So I would like to set financial limits to the fundraising powers of a town council. I'd like creative schemes like this in place. So would there be a write-in box for creative ideas to set up the town council with the same and I'll call it integrity of financial management that the district council has. The district council has a very robust system of integrity wrapped around it, so that the likes of, you know, the crazy councils of the 1980s don't re-emerge. Not wanting to make any political points, but okay. So one or two comments there. So I think this is a working document, and I think it would be helpful to have a Word document that could be passed around councillors with a track changes item in there, just so that we can kind of get it doing a little bit more than it's doing at the moment. It's a very dry document. And the final comment is on the publicity. I suppose the answer to this is some of this is in our hands, which is why, as I say, I think it would be useful. I'll consult with Councillor Clack and other colleagues about how this committee can be used to help publicise this community governance review. But we have got a small budget. We're going to have to do some publicity on this. And I'd like to understand a little bit more about that. So I've kind of summarised a few questions and comments and points on there. As I say, what I'd like to see is a working document evolve now over the next couple of weeks that does a little bit more than this. Now, I'm certainly not volunteering to write any context of what happened in the 1970s. Before I was born, I might have, but perhaps Councillor Wooden can have some of those help with some of those comments. And I do think that there are people in this group with a working document that could be pushed around that could help say we need a little bit more. You know what I mean? We know we get taxed on a special expense area, that the people of Stamford tell us how to spend that in Grantham. This is the bit we're talking about. If £80 for the people of Grantham, people of Stamford telling us how to spend it becomes £90. If it's Grantham people spending that money, then perhaps it's a little bit more palatable. Graham, if you could perhaps talk to those points, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Obviously, time is of the essence. So we've got until the 11th of February to actually submit this to the printers in order that they can turn it around in time for the 25th of February. So happy to provide members with a copy of the document, but just mindful of the deadline for getting it to our printers, and also a process. So if every member wants to make an amendment to the document, we still need a central point to agree a final version. So that's just something to bear in mind. The other thing that I just need to emphasise is that it still needs to remain neutral. In terms of pros and cons, someone's pro might be someone else's con. So it's really, really important to keep that as neutral as possible. So a pro to someone might be, I've got a local layer of governance. I've got more councillors that are local that I can refer to. Someone else's pro for not having a town council might be, actually, there's enough councillors in Grantham, I don't need any more. It's that's an argument both sides, that so you can't just assume.
Can I just comment on that? Because I think that's absolutely right. And some people may think that that moving decision-making powers further away from Grantham is a good thing. But nowhere in this document does that actually set the context of where decisions are taken, and the fact that the majority of your bill is not decided in Grantham, and that this is an attempt to get Grantham people having decision-making powers over how your money is spent in Grantham. And that's an absolutely fundamental front central point of the context of the Grantham Town Council for me. But so I do take your point. A pros and a cons and an observations might be a good point. But sorry to interrupt you.
No, it's fine. So yeah, it was just a point. It's just about neutrality. Just making sure that it maintains its neutrality in terms of it's a fair consultation document for people to participate in. In relation to the reference to unitary authorities as well, I just think, at the moment, there's no formal proposal for a unitary authority for Lincolnshire. I'd be very nervous about putting anything in the document that may assume such an arrangement will be in place, because it's pure speculation in terms of whether or not that may occur and when it may occur. We've got to be factual in the information that we put in the document. So again, that's the reason for not referring to any such proposal in this as part of this consultation process. So I just wanted to kind of make that clear, really. In terms of the cost implications, which are on page 4, Councillor Mason made a great suggestion earlier about referring to what other town councils cost and perhaps including that as an appendix or even having that information in there. That's something that we've got information in relation to that to hand, so we can certainly include that as a way of showing as an example as to what other town councils cost in the district. So again, we're not setting ourselves up, which was my caution. We're actually just stating a fact that this is how much it costs in Stamford, this is how much it costs in Bourne, etc. So we can certainly include that in the document. I can't remember which member it was, so apologies, but in terms of the rationale behind why we're doing a review now, that's on page 2. Why is the council carrying out a community governance review now? What I could do actually is attach a link to the minutes of the council, because that sets out the notice of motion that was discussed, and it sets out the reasons why members felt it necessary to bring a review now. So we can certainly add that into the document, because that will then give people again the opportunity to look at that report or that set of minutes from council, which sets out the reasons why members felt it important to undertake a review now. So again, that might be useful context to include.
So there's one final point as well, but before we go on to that, I'm just going to disagree with you. I don't think the motion from council, that may have been the mechanism, but I don't think that's convincing anyone of the why. I think that's just telling you that this was approved, but okay, fair enough. And the final question I had was, before we come on to questions, is my point that Barrowby and London thought they would expect to be part of this. Yeah. So if you can comment on that, I think there would be an absolute expectation that they'd be involved.
Thank you, Chairman. All parishes that surround Grantham are going to be involved in the consultation process. So all residents of those parishes and the parish council will all be sent a copy of the letter and the consultation document, and will be encouraged to respond.
Okay, that's very clear. Thank you. Councillor Wharton.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. There's quite a lot of chatter at the moment on Facebook. I mean, as you said, we pay £3.99 for those people who actually live in the old borough of Grantham. But there is, of course, the fact that if we become a town council, it doesn't necessarily mean that we'll have a mayor. And I don't think that is clear in this document at all.
Just whilst we're looking that point up, Councillor Rice-Oxley, do you want to ask your question?
Yeah, just building on what's been going on, really. I wonder if we could have, I understand the thing about pros and cons, but if we could have a big table in an appendix which had the 3 market towns, how many town councillors they have, what services they cover, the cost of that, and then the Grantham column is going to say all decisions made by the council as a whole. And then it's clear to people, I think what Chairman's trying to say is that people, I certainly wasn't aware of this at all. I had no idea that decisions are being made about Grantham by the whole of South Kesteven, and decisions are being made by Stamford and Bourne and Market Deeping by the people of Stamford and Bourne and Market Deeping. And we need to, I think Graham's absolutely right, Chairman's absolutely right, we need to lay this out for people, and maybe a table which was just pure facts, and then people can see what the other 3 towns are getting, what services their people. You might even want to include, are the councillors paid? Because I have a feeling that people think, oh, it's just people wanting to, earn more money doing nothing or whatever. If there, are the councillors paid? They're not, are they? They're not paid. They're all voluntary positions in the 3, but they have this control over all these different services and what it costs. And then the Grantham column will be quite blank because it's all done by the council.
Yeah. And okay, thank you for those points. And the mayor comment, Graham?
I thought we had included something in relation to the mayor, but I can elaborate on that. I think on page 3 we talk about the current arrangement, but I can certainly make reference to the fact that it doesn't necessarily have to.
So some interesting points here. Do we have any closing points, or I'd like to move it on really. As I say, I think this is Councillor Mason.
Just a very, very quick one. I'm sorry, Graham. Just got to go back to my original question, how to respond on page 2. Looking at what we've got on page 6, I think that how to respond, that can just be gotten rid of, to be honest, because we've got it in full details on page 6. But if somebody's going to look at that particular paragraph and think that's just too complicated for me, whereas it's really listed on page 6, get rid of that paragraph and then that will give you more room, to elaborate on everything else.
And are there any other comments? Closing comments, Councillor Whittington.
Yes, Graham. Thanks. Getting back to the point, very good point that Kathy just raised about her schedule of what councils services the other town councils are doing. At some point, people of Grantham may think that if they vote for town council, they're going to gain control of highways and adult social care and the bins and all this kind of stuff. And the reality is they're not, because there are some services that will stay with the county council and the district council. I think it's important because the expectation might be that all the budgets that affect the residents of Grantham all come back. Well, that's just not that question. It just isn't going to happen. It is going to be around parks and cemeteries and things like that. So I think it's important that the expectation isn't sort of built up, and the people are going to expect that everything's going to come down, because it's quite simply it's not. So I don't quite know how you get that message across, that this is the range of services the town councils traditionally do, but it'd be up to a new Grantham Town Council, if one was to come into force, as to what of that list of services it would do. Thanks, Graham.
Okay, thank you for that, Councillor Whittington. If there are no further comments, so we've taken a lot of feedback here. What I suggest is that my vice chairman and I, we sit down with yourselves and try and incorporate some of these comments. And as I say, anybody that wants to join that session, I'd welcome to broaden that session as much as possible. But I think what we're saying is that this is a great start, but it just needs to do more to educate people on the context, the scope, the financial implications, the powers, and I still will say pros and cons, because although I do take your caveat that bringing decision-making powers back to Grantham may be a huge negative for, I suppose, anybody that's met any of the councillors, but that's that was a joke, by the way. But no, that might be a negative to some people. So I will take your comments, but I think that if Councillor Clack's happy, I think that we can centralise some comments and work on a second draft before we can move this forward, because there's been a lot of really good comments today about increasing the education of the residents in order to make an informed decision. Are there any comments and questions? Okay, with that, is there any other business in the room? Can I just ask, Graham, if you can comment please on the schedule of how often we'll need to meet, or any other further meetings we'll need to have, given that we're about to enter a period of purdah as well. How do you envisage our meeting schedule being on this, Graham? Thanks.
Thanks, Chairman. Well, given that we've got to get this sent to the printers by the 11th of February, I'll liaise with you and the Vice Chairman to agree a bit of an informal schedule to ensure that we're happy with the document. We have got a meeting scheduled, I think, later in February, 21st of February, but that will be once this would have already been sent off by then. So I don't know if you needed to use that meeting, or if you'd prefer to meet once the consultation was live. And then we'll obviously need to have a further meeting at the end of the consultation session to analyse all of the responses that have been received before making a recommendation to council. But that won't be until after the 8th of April.
Okay, that's clear. I'll liaise with Councillor Clack to confirm those. Councillor Smith.
Yes, I think one thing that we must get over is that a lot of Grantham staff went to Lincoln, and it was quite clearly for Grantham at the times. And I think that is something that's a lot of people in Grantham do find that, yeah, well, what's the point? It'll only go to Lincoln. So I think it's important that we make sure that as much as possible of the things that were donated from the various barracks that were around here, from all of the work that and powers that people had and did during and after the
Yeah. Councillors, I think you're right, Councillor Smith. I think you're straying into perhaps the ongoing activities of a town council or a community governance area, which, I mean, I think it's important for us to set this up correctly and ensure that the people of Grantham are consulted correctly and that there's a proper mandate for that. But it's also important for us not to second guess what that council will or will not do, subject to certain limits. Okay, if there are no other comments in the Councillor Whittington.
Sorry, yeah. If the deadline is there's going to print us is 11th of February, these documents, if there are substantial changes to them, I would like the opportunity to have a meeting to look at the final version, just to sign it off, rather than just sort of say now, potentially there's going to be some changes to the documents. I think we do need some sight of that and some sign off.
Yeah, apologies, Councillor Whittington, if I didn't make that clear. Yes, so I think what we said was there is more work to be done, but yes, this committee will have to have final sign off. So yes, that sounds like it could be a remote meeting again, but yes, there will be a final sign off. So I would expect another meeting within the next couple of weeks.
Okay, great, that's fine. Thanks very much indeed. Thank you.
Okay, are there any other comments and questions in the room or online? No, it's 2:55. I close the meeting. Thank you very much, everyone.
Cheers. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.